Having daddy's baby. On today's Modern Day Leper with Ahmad Blakemore. Hello, Leper Nation. How are you? And welcome back to another edition of Modern Day Leper with Ahmad Blakemore. So we're here to discuss the new abortion laws that are sweeping the nation at a very fast pace, without any exceptions for incest or rape, any exceptions whatsoever for time. No abortion, period, no time for any reason. What does that say to us as a nation of people, of intelligent people, who knows that incest is wrong? No exception for incest means that all the things that sex offenders have been prosecuted for are now laxed. There is no exception for raping someone. Statutory rape, we know what that is. That's having sex with an underage person, someone below 18, or someone who is not old enough to consent. So not only are we going to compound that crime that already has been committed against them, we're asking them to have babies for the rapist. If a 12-year-old or a 15-year-old is too young to consent to sex, why would we believe that they're old enough to consent to parenthood, especially in the case of incest? Can you imagine what it's like to have a child for a family member? Can you imagine the trauma that a young lady would feel having a baby for a family member that raped her? Someone that was constantly molesting her, that she obviously hates. And now she has to give birth to that person's child. We know what incest is. Incest is the sexual relationship with a person that is too closely related to be married. Incest is a crime when that happens, when you have intercourse with a parent or a child or a sibling or a grandparent. And why is it a crime? The reason it's a crime is because it usually results in birth defects. Birth defects that are hard on the family, on the family's budget, on the family's well-being, on the family's ability to love and care for each other. And yet, intelligent men and women are now saying that there is no exception for incest. Where a crime has already been committed, statutory rape has already been committed. Rape has already been committed. Crimes have already taken place against the virtues of a young person. And now we're asking that person, instead of relieving their burden, we're compiling their burden by asking them to give birth. Something that they are obviously not ready for, by someone that they no doubt hate or who has abused them. I would like to tell you a story about two sisters that I knew as a young boy, and we will call them Judy and Ella. Judy and Ella lived across the alley from my backyard. In other words, when I come out of my backyard, there was an alley, and then their backyard faced my backyard. They were quiet young ladies. And in this time in Chicago, the population was kind of mixed. The Jewish community had not started their migration from the south side of Chicago, and they were a Jewish family. The father was extremely mean. And I remember seeing Judy and Ella. Ella was my age. We were in the 3rd grade. Judy was older. She was in the 6th or 7th grade. And I remember how quiet and reserved they were. They would come up to the fence and wave at us, and we would come up to the fence and wave at them, but they were reserved. I got the feeling from them that they were highly religious. Their father was extremely strict. I remember every time he came home, they always had to run in the house. And their mother was fearful. Your dad's coming, your dad's coming. And she would come out and rush those girls in the house. They weren't allowed to be outside. They weren't allowed to be talking to anybody, and neither was the mother. I remember my sister one day at the fence talking to Judy, the older. And Judy didn't have on any underwear, as I remember the conversation. And my sister said, "Girl, why don't you have on any underwear?" And she said, "My father doesn't allow us to wear underwear." It's kind of weird. It was one of the weirdest things I had heard. But as a kid, I just shook it off like, oh, that's stupid. But understanding now what I understand that I didn't understand then, how much control he had over them and how fearful they were of him, and how the wife was fearful of him, and how he would abuse her and beat her. I saw him one day outside beating the girls because they were outside when he came home, and he was beating them across the back with a piece of bamboo. And they were screaming as they were running in the house, and the mother was trying to ask him to stop. Sometime later, we found out that Judy, the older girl, was pregnant. She was in the 6th or 7th grade at the time. She wanted to have an abortion because her father was the father of the child, and she was ashamed, and she had stopped going to school, and she was staying at home, and she came over to the fence. And I remember her talking to my sister. And I remember late one night, my sister asked me to run in the house and get 3 hangers. And her and friends of hers were trying to help Judy have an abortion. I remember all the blood that they were trying to clean up with napkins and a white sheet that they had me run in the house and get. I didn't see everything that happened, but I remember taking those sheets, bloody, and putting them in the trash can in the alley. I remember Judy bleeding a lot. I had never heard the word abortion. I had never heard the word molestation. I had never heard the words abuse, child molestation, sex offender. I had never heard any of those words. But I was watching them as they played out on a young girl who tried to give herself an abortion with a hanger. Judy died 2 days later from complications of hemorrhaging from trying to give herself an abortion because she didn't want to have her father's child. The younger sister, Ella, was so depressed that she ended up in the hospital. She stayed in the hospital for about a month. She stayed so long because she didn't want to go back home, because her mother was afraid that the father would continue to molest her. I remember she came back home. She never came outside. The last thing we heard about that family was when they were on the news, when police cars showed up at the house because the mother shot the father and killed him, protecting Ella from more abuse. She could not stand the thought of losing another daughter. To talk about this right now is emotional to me as a sex offender, as a person who is on the registry, who have hurt people in my life. But never in my whole life would I think that intelligent people would believe that a young woman raped and molested and abused by her father should have her father's child. I don't know where these new abortion laws are going. I can tell you this: a lot of people are going to be hurt by this. A lot of people are going to lose their lives, like Judy, trying to give herself an abortion because she did not want to live with the shame of having her father's child. We really need to think about what we're doing. I thought the sex offenders were the bad guys. I thought the people on the registry was the bad guys. I had no idea that the lawmakers and the church were going to become chief players in the business of abusing young girls. I'm Ahmad Blakemore. I am the modern day leper king, and I will see you on the next one. Have a great one. Bye-bye.